Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webcast entitled Your Path to Media Measurements. Today's conversation is brought to you by Universal Information Services and powered by Onstream Media. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webinar, please click on the Ask a Question button on the bottom of your screen. Simply type your message into the box and click on the Submit button. Alternatively, you can submit your question via Twitter using the hashtag AMECMM. That's AMEC. All questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to today's host, Todd Murphy, Vice President of Universal Information Services. Todd, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. That voice of God was Dave from our partners at Onstream Media. I want to make sure we thank Onstream Media for helping us produce today's webcast. I also wanted to thank Faye Shapiro at compro.biz for promoting and also tying the experts in the industry together for today's free webinar. We have a very large group, and we're going to move fairly quickly, but I want to set the tone and tenor of today's event to be rather informal, a casual approach to what we've entitled Your Path to Media Measurement. We realize that people are probably at different points along that spectrum of media measurement. Universal Information Services is not only a media monitoring service, but in our ability to track all media, we also provide insights to organizations through analysis and reliable methodologies for measuring that. So whether you are far along and have a reliable methodology already established, or you haven't started measuring the outcomes and efforts of your PR effort, today's session will be very insightful. We have two outstanding experts in the field joining us today. We have Deirdre Breckenridge. Deirdre is the CEO of Pure Performance Communications. She is also the author of no less than 5 Financial Times books. She is an adjunct professor at the New York University, NYU, and also an online instructor at UMass Amherst. Breckenridge, like many of you, is also a member of PRSA. So we're excited to have her. We also have Dane Wiseman from AirPR joining us today. Dane, is Director of Marketing at AirPR. He teaches the next generation of marketing and analytics professionals at the New York University, NYU as well. So one thing I want to draw attention to is that both Deirdre and Dane, as well as myself and my measurement director, Austin Gall, who's joining me today, take a keen interest in educating tomorrow's PR professionals. So that's just one thank you I want to issue to Dane and Deirdre for that, and thank them. As I mentioned, we're going to take you from where you are to where you want to be. Each speaker, Dane and Deirdre, will go over what I'd call theoretical approaches to reliable and valid methodologies for measuring your PR efforts. And then we're going to talk more specifically, taking the theoretical and making it applicable. We're currently showing a poll, a simple yes-no question poll on the control of your Onstream deck. Are you currently measuring your communication efforts? We just wanted to ask that question to get an idea of how many of you are currently performing media measurement and how many aren't. Through that lens, we'll spend the next 53 minutes or so discussing tactics and methods that may help you. So if you can take a moment, just a few seconds to answer that poll, and then we'll go into Deirdre Breckenridge first. Deirdre, if you'd like to take over, we'll hand the baton to you.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much. And it's so nice to be with everyone today. Let me just get up my slides. Okay. So I thought I'd start off in really getting everybody into the mindset of measurement, accountability, and what I call being the masters of the metrics, or becoming a master of the metrics. And this is actually something that came out of my book that I wrote back in 2012, where I was defining all these new practices for PR professionals. And really, the master of the metrics is somebody who understands that we have to show more measurement accountability today. And social media is one of the things that really helped to make this happen in an age of conversations, social conversations, but really how we have to deliver value to our organization. And in so many ways, people look at accountability differently. So I'm going to ask you now a question just to think about. Do you see yourself as a master of the metrics? And then I'll ask that same question after I get through some of the theory that's in these slides. So think about it, because in order to be a master of the metrics, you have to start in a certain place, understanding, of course, that there is strategy and planning that goes into anything that you do. And far too often, what we see is our professionals who jump into the tactics of the communication. And believe me, that's all the fun stuff. And now you're in my classroom. As Todd had said, I am a professor. I'm teaching right now at UMass, and I'm a capstone advisor at NYU. And so many times, we just want to communicate. But as you can see underneath the iceberg here, that measurement and ROI is a part of the plan, and it requires your attention and planning. So what I like to do is to say, okay, let's define that role as a master of the metrics. So that's my practice number 8. And maybe just think about how you are looking at your goals and objectives. First of all, are you asking yourself what you're trying to achieve? Do you understand the metrics that allow you to actually track back to your goals and objectives? Are those objectives quantified and benchmarked over time? Are you understanding what your executives are looking for in terms of the metrics that make them happy in the higher level buckets that they look at and they care about, versus maybe what other stakeholders in the organization want from you? And those are some of the areas that you really have to think about and map out before you start communicating. So you can, of course, look at this diagram more deeply. These materials will be available to you after the presentation today. So just to break it down a little bit more, on this next slide, so ask yourself, what are your goals? Now, in public relations and communications, I always like to think about the outputs, the outtakes, and the outcomes. And, you know, everybody knows the outputs are all the things that we push out there. That's more the news releases, the blog posts, the infographics, all the posts you're putting on Facebook. It's everything that we're saying and doing. Our outtakes are what inspire others to write about us, the journalists, the bloggers, our customers, and what they're doing because we actually shared something valuable. And when it comes to the outcomes, that's going to be something that moves the needle for the business. What happens from your communication that actually leads to, maybe it's a brand lift, maybe it's, if it's internal employee communications, it's more productivity, maybe it's something around customer satisfaction, maybe it's leads and sales. Those are outcomes that your communication is a part of. And I just gave some examples to say, hey, if you're looking at outcomes, you still have to make sure that you are quantifying and benchmarking over time. Same thing in example number 2 with an outtake. You know, if we're increasing our earned media or editorial placements, how much are we doing that and by when? If we're driving more downloads for lead generation because we're driving our communication to a website, a landing page, how many downloads are increasing over time and by what percentage. So that is the thinking behind it, and this is all baked into your program before you even start. And, you know, there's this slide kind of breaks down the thinking, and it's handy because it shows you, yes, we can look at things quantitatively and we can look qualitatively, and that's a two-brain approach. But look at that lower left-hand bucket. That is the outcome bucket, and that is what your leadership and C-level cares about. So every time you put together a program and you know you want to get media and you want the awareness, how does that translate into what your C-level or leadership thinks about in terms of leads and sales and customer satisfaction, or maybe it's innovation and being creative with your own customers and their endorsements. So that's a really important way to break it down and to kind of track some of those metrics. And then I thought it would be helpful because when you are a master of the metrics, you really know what people need in your organization. So executives want business metrics, and it's broken out: customer satisfaction, sales, revenue, reputation. If you're doing media audits, that's what they're looking at. When it comes to maybe your director of marketing or the head of sales, what do they want? It's word of mouth, it's daily volume, it's share of voice, it's any insights you glean from customers, it's those valuable endorsements. And then maybe on another level, you have your agencies and community managers. Well, guess what? They need to know how many fans you're growing your community, the views, the RTs, the share, some of the engagement data, because that says what is working. And lastly, very important that as you are thinking about all the different ways that you're going to be strategic and measure your program, is that you have to have a scorecard. And if you only had 15 or 20 minutes to talk to an executive, what would you share with them? Would it be the numbers, percentage changes over time every week or every 2 weeks? Would it be charts and graphs because they like to see things visually? Learning how to manage that and to report the right way so that your executive gets exactly what she or he needs is really important. So those are just a few of the ways that you can step back and really now you can ask yourself, once again, am I a master of the metrics, and what do you need to do to move from your outputs through to your outtakes all the way to your outcomes? And I did want to share this slide, which it's a honeycomb poster diagram that you can download for free. It includes practice number 8, which is the master of the metrics, as well as all the other practices that we now need to think about. And you can go to www.8prpractices.com and you can download that poster or any one of the practices for free. And I am now going to hand it back over to Todd.
Thanks, Deirdre. For those of you who joined us a little bit late, that's Deirdre Breckenridge, who just spoke, CEO of Pure Performance Communications. I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions, Deirdre. First of all, for any of the attendees today who are over 40, that last slide of yours looks comfortingly familiar as the Light Bright game. Is that correct?
It does look like that, doesn't it? I used to play with Light Bright a long time ago.
I appreciate it for that. The other thing I appreciated was your comments. If you were going to share something with the C-suite, one of your executives, you asked kind of the rhetorical question, what would you share with them? I just wanted to get an idea. If there was one or two key metrics that you would suggest to someone getting started with measurement and being asked to share some metrics, is there one or two that you would recommend as a starting point?
Yes, so they definitely, so they love share of voice, which you would track against competitors, but I would take that a step further. It is extremely important to show your executives how message pull-through comes in the form of all of those articles and the bloggers that write about you and even your customers. that is so important to let executives know that the time you spend working on those messages is actually resonating and getting out there. So that's a couple ways, as well as the traffic that as a result of your communication and all of your media and all of the blog posts, and that it drives somewhere, and that you can show traffic to the website and the performance analytics after that. What do people do? How do they behave?
Great, thank you. And we'll come back to Deirdre after we hear from Dane here in a moment. I want to do a couple reminders. One, if you are tweeting or want to ask a question on Twitter, please use the hashtag AMECMM. That's AMECMM. Part of today's event is structured around Measurement Month, which is an international awareness campaign by AMEC. And several of the things, the outputs, the outtakes, the outcomes, we'll be going over later as part of AMEC's new integrated framework. So I want to thank Deirdre for highlighting those. And then I want to introduce Dane Wiseman, Director of Marketing at AirPR. Dane's also going to go through some of the fundamentals, the practicals, and how they help their clients with measurement. Dane?
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Deirdre. And on the screen now, you should all be seeing the first slide to the next section of the webinar. So as we're looking at how do we drive decisions with data. So the first step that I just want to take here is reinforcing what Deirdre said, where we need to set up, as practitioners, specific frameworks in order to measure our campaigns. So when we're looking at a specific campaign example, and as I walk through these slides, the example that I'm actually going to use, Deirdre, sorry, I didn't ask permission beforehand, but I'll use AirPR practices as an example use case as we go through here. So as we actually look at a site, and we're setting up a site, or we have a business objective and we have a goal, if we're looking at an individual site, we're going to go ahead and state what our goals and objectives are. So as we go through these goals and objectives for a publishing site like AirPR practices, we can set up a framework that's specific to our ability to track, one, our inbound site visitors. We can actually track the behavior on the site, and then also we can look at how often those pieces of content are downloaded. So as Deirdre mentioned, if we go to the site, if we download those resources, as the publisher and as the site owner, we have in our arsenal of technology and tools and capabilities the ability to track that content, to track that activity. So even if you were using a free analytics tool like Google Analytics, you could bring up your real-time dashboard right now as AirPRpractices.com. And as many of us are probably taking a look at that site or opened a separate tab, we can see those sessions in real time. We could also check the amount of downloads in near real time and see how people are interacting with that content as we go. Now, to step back into the presentation here and just to reintroduce myself. So I'm the Director of Marketing at AirPR, and AirPR is a PR tech company that provides analytics, insights, and measurement solutions for the PR industry. As we start looking at the overall framework of this discussion, we're going to go through a use case looking at a specific audience. So the one we're looking at right now are the audiences and attendance of today's webinar. So we're looking at AirPRpractices.com. We'll then investigate our campaign goals and objectives. We'll look at various strategies and tactics. We'll talk about something that's really exciting for the PR industry. That's our ability to implement tags and various conversion tracking sets across numerous different platforms. So as we're all seeing, there are dozens of PR technologies. There are thousands of other technologies out there. It's sometimes hard to make sense of what works best for me. However, we'll go through some of the myths surrounding that and take a look at the various PR techs out there. On the measurement, KPIs and metrics, there are hundreds of metrics. It's really going into what metrics are important to you. So if we're looking at AirPRpractices.com, what's important to us is interactions with the site, the number of downloads of that content. So as we're working through and setting up our framework of measurement, That's the ultimate goal that we want to track back to. It's very important to know. It's very important that we have a specific goal to track to. Then we'll talk about optimization and then reports and dashboards. So when we're looking at targeting our audience, there are many ways for us to research with free tools who our audience might be, where they might be located. We can use free tools, and even if you go into, say, Twitter advertising or Facebook advertising or even LinkedIn, there are many forecasting tools within those technologies that give us accurate insight or fairly accurate insights into how many people belong to a specific group or have a specific job title or are in a specific region. So social networks give us a lot of free and publicly available data into our target audiences. So I highly recommend leveraging some of those free tools just for audience insights and identifying your market size. If we go on to establishing goals and objectives, you should always start out and pause before launching a campaign or starting an endeavor. What are your actual business goals? As Deirdre mentioned, some of the key ones that we have out there, we can do transactions, signups, we can do even site engagement. If we're a publisher without a clear transaction or subscription, maybe we want time on site or pages viewed. With our awareness campaigns, maybe we're looking at reach and how our message resonates with our target audience. Going down to our example strategy. So these are just some example strategies that we could look at. These are, again, examples. The strategy component, that goes into the campaign planning. So perhaps for our AirPRpractices.com, one of our key strategies might be to publish stories and place links back to that specific piece of content. So one, we want to gain perhaps backlinks to our content, so we gain page authority and site authority for SEO. We may want to increase our downloads by sharing this within the PR community, and there are many different ways of going about that. So within those given strategies, we're then presented with various tactics. Now, this is a great diagram of tactics from Spin Sucks. And when we look at the PESO model, there's a lot of great tactics across paid, earned, shared, and owned. So there's a lot of great ways for you to position the activities that roll up into your strategy and objectives. When we're looking at the overall technology landscape, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know if you've seen this diagram before or if you choose to zoom in, but this is from Chief Martech. There are thousands of technologies, I think 3,000 plus, the last count, across various functions for PR and marketing. Now, if you were to zoom in on each of those sections, those go into maybe PR, or they go into analytics, or they go into visual storytelling. So there's a lot of different tool sets out there for you to add to your goals of to your strategies and tactics in order to accomplish your goals. Really, when you look at these technologies, and even if you drill down into this PR tech ecosystem that we now have, you're able to see exactly what technologies best suit your brand and best suit your efforts. And that's really one of the exciting points about PR today, is that we have a lot of technology at our fingertips and within our grasp that allow us to access data points that we never before had. It allows us to pull in that public data from web sources, from digital sources. It allows us to combine all of that with new and exciting metrics, like tying that with Google Analytics data and allowing us to tie in site data to our actual PR activities. So it's a very exciting time on the technology side, and that gives us access to new ways of measuring the performance of our campaigns. So when we're looking at an actual PR metrics funnel from top to bottom, perhaps we're starting with that awareness and impression layer, where we're seeing how far is our message actually reaching. Then we're seeing who is engaging with that metric. And ultimately, the key point that we're trying to make is what actual decisions or conversions are being made against those activities. So that's really what these new PR technologies are allowing us to do. They're allowing us to track across dozens, if not thousands or millions of networks, websites, social profiles to see, did our reach and our message actually resonate with this audience, so they went back to our site and completed a desired action. That's really the importance of what we do today. From a overall bucketing standpoint, so putting different segments to our metrics, one thing I would encourage you to do is research a terminology called segments. And segments allow you to separate your audience types. So perhaps you want to create a segment within your reporting, within your structure for brand. Here is our branded traffic, and here's what they did. Their conversion rates are going to be much higher than non-branded or from paid ads. So in creating these segments, it allows you to set proper expectations around your projections, around that audience, and around your ability to deliver on what you promised or what you told the C-suite. So it's important to set those proper expectations as they pertain to different audience types. On the optimization side, so this is just a step process for you to look at. It usually starts with strategy. I highlighted the tactics in that your strategy may remain similar, but your tactics in going about it may change dramatically as you go through with various activities. You have your measurement framework in place, so as long as you're tracking, as long as you have conversion tracking in place and the ability to set up goals and events on your website, you can actually just go through this process. Here's the strategy we propose. Here are the tactics we're going to take, and here are the results. We then take our findings and our insights and then start over again. Now it's time for us to work through that process again. That's the exciting thing, and the reason why I love analytics and measurement is our ability to set up a framework, to track what we do, and to keep at it. We can constantly improve our campaigns and constantly see those increases in engagement rate, conversion rate, actual revenue coming into the company. And with all of these new technologies, we can see that in near real time. And lastly, I just wanted to include the dashboard component. Deirdre had a really awesome scorecard on there. So the ability for us to pull in reports, various widgets, put everything into one singular dashboard, one place that we have a dashboard for our C-suite, we have a dashboard for our directors, we have a dashboard for our team members, and anyone else who wants to collaborate and share in the results for our success. On the agency side, too, these are the reports that we share with clients. So it's very important for us to structure data so it makes sense. And PR practitioners, it's from a storytelling component, this is already ingrained. This is a skill set that is had where we know how to tell a story. So as long as you take this data, apply it to visualizations, you're the champions of telling that story. And yeah, so that's what I have. I've left some PR resources on here too. So all of these PR resources are, this document will be available for download, and then you can click on some of these recommended resources as well. And yeah, thank you so much, and back to you, Todd.
All right, Dane, thanks. And you're not going anywhere yet. We're not letting you off the hook until the top of the hour.
No, I'm still here. No,
all right,
I'm still here.
I wanted to tick off, some of our attendees asked a couple questions for you. First, what do you mean by data-driven decisions?
Absolutely. So when we start looking at data-driven decisions, that's actually basing our next steps or our strategies and our tactics off of data, off of quantitative metrics, or maybe even quantitative or qualitative too, where if we have a specific channel or a specific outlet that's performing well for us, those are the decisions that we make to continue on with them or not, right? So if a channel doesn't work, can we fix it? Can we recommend new solutions, or have we exhausted all of our efforts for that particular channel?
Great. I might ask the same question of Deirdre. I don't know if you're on mute right now or if you can jump in, but how do you counsel your clients to make better decisions based on the methodology of measurement that you try to institutionalize with them?
So, taking myself off mute, when you look at, I'll go back to more specifics in those outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. When you take a look at, for example, you've carved out many different outputs that you're sharing, and you start to look at the reach and the engagement around what you've shared, that tells you, is what we've shared actually relevant, and do people care? The more they share, that's going to inform your decision on what you should create moving forward. When it comes to, I'll give you kind of like an outcome example. I worked with a client, media video company, and we do a cornerstone, cobblestone approach to content marketing. The cornerstone is that big piece of content that we're going to offer to people. The cobblestones are all the little pieces that we carve up that really generate the sharing and the engagement, and we can see message pull through. But when it comes to the big piece of content, and we're driving to a landing page, at the end of the day, as we're watching the downloading of that content, and you're asking people to put in their email address and maybe their title, as you see the conversion rate, as you see from literally the lead, and you're working with other areas of the company to determine, did that lead then turn into a meeting? Did that meeting then turn into a sale? That's going to tell you, of our audience, did the content generate? Was it the right people that we were targeting that the conversion led to a sale? In one case with this media company, what we found out was that all of the managers and director level people that were segmented definitely left their information, but our next piece of content we geared towards CMOs because the decision making was in their hands, and that helped to inform our decision by looking at that conversion rate. So that's kind of how you let the data help you make decisions moving forward. Does that answer your question?
No, that was great. Both of you answered it very well. I might put on my Universal Information Services hat for a moment and share how we help in that area. Our level of media measurement is very focused on the qualitative side of things. We developed an impact score to quantify stories relevant to each other, but it leans heavily on qualitative metrics. So delivering deeper insights is what Austin's organization, his department within our company, does. But evaluating key messages is really where we focus on our clients, helping them to make data-driven decisions. If they have several messages that they may be articulating through the PESO model, whether it's paid, earned, shared, or owned placements, we try to help them understand which messages are resonating most within those channels. So if any of the attendees are still wondering how to make data-driven decisions, one initial step we counsel on is knowing which messages actually resonate with the demographic or audience or media type you're trying to reach. There was a couple other questions. Kathy asked, define branded metrics. I think that came during your session, Dane. Could you briefly, I know we want to move on to some practical application, but define branded metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was speaking on segments. So when we're actually segmenting out our audience, these would be any sort of metrics that are connected to a segmented, so someone from our audience arriving via a branded channel. So one of those owned channels. We can look at it via analytics, acquisition, a lot of direct traffic, and and with technologies like AirPR as well, we can help give you insight into that direct traffic source and kind of what's coming in as a result of your efforts. And then also if you have some social channels or referrals, those can also be pulled into specific segments as it relates to your brand. Now, within a segmented view, that could roll up to hundreds of metrics. So you could still have conversions tied to a branded channel. So don't separate the two. So that's more of a dimension or characteristic paired with a metric like transaction or revenue, which can easily be done.
Great. Thanks for answering that question, Dane. I'm going to briefly talk on how do you help clients with media measurement. The whole impetus of today's event, I mentioned at the top of the hour, and if anyone joined us late, again, I'm Todd Murphy, Vice President with Universal Information Services. As a member of the International Association for the Measurement and Evaluation of Communication, Universal is participating in what's known as Measurement Month. This is the third year that we've participated, and today's one-hour webinar is really designed to help educate PR practitioners on how to institutionalize sound methodologies for measurement. I might transition now to one of the more recent developments that our Global Trade Association, AMIC, has developed, and I think we have Richard Bagnali following along today. So this is really something that he is behind and has helped bring to the world of measurement. It's the integrated framework. Deirdre, at the top of her presentation, talked about steps 4, 5, and 6 within that framework, the outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. The neat thing about this framework is it's available online at amicorg.com. That's AMECORG.com. And it's a very, I'd call it a rudimentary, interactive flow chart for you to step through. Whether you're at the beginning of measurement or you're a seasoned measurement professional, it's a nice tool to use to really plan and execute your measurement methodology. And I'm going to ask that question of Deirdre and Dane here shortly. How do they help organizations institutionalize a valid method for measurement? But I wanted to point out this tool that everyone can download. If you go to the second slide, Austin, this is the objective. This is kind of the starting point where you can, in the first frame, map out behaviors, end results, kind of macro planning or outcomes that you want to see at the beginning of your campaign. What is the objective you want? What are you trying to do? Deirdre phrased it as moving the needle. Well, how do you know when you're being successful? What needle are you moving? And so this first frame helps you understand that. The second box in that first frame is a communication objective. So whether it's in paid, earned, shared, or owned, how will you know when your communication objectives are being reached? What represents success? What represents failure? What represents we need to rethink this and come at it from a different direction? So I wanted to make sure that I briefly just showed everyone the framework that AMIC has created, this interactive framework, and encourage you to explore the AMIC website. Measurement Month will be going on through the end of September, so if you want to follow on and have access to other sessions, next week it passes from North America to another part of the world, but any of these measurement webinars and sessions you can participate in can all be found on the calendar for Measurement Month on the AMIC website. So I want to come back to that question now. Deirdre and Dane, we'll start with Deirdre. Both of you have talked about a framework. You've illustrated a framework, and I've just showcased the AMIC framework. How do you counsel your clients to make sure, whether they're completely using you or just relying on you for a portion of the strategy, so they have a sound, reliable, and valid measurement methodology? How do you help them establish that? Deirdre?
Well, that's a great question, Todd. So I think the organization, whether you're working with an agency, a consultant, a partner who has a great measurement platform, you really have to take a good, close look at the capabilities of your team and the resources that you have for measurement. Because remember, there's so much that you can measure, but at the end of the day, are you going to be able to set the right expectations with the leadership as well as other team members to be able to put something in place that makes sense and that isn't so taxing on the team that is responsible. So being mindful of your own resources is really important, and then knowing that, whether your goal is exposure or engagement or preference or impact or advocacy, and that comes right out of AMEC, as I recall, their framework, an earlier framework. Do you know which measurements? Do you have the ability to track specific KPIs so that you can, in fact, prove that you've reached your goal? So all of this becomes a part of your framework, and you need to really be thinking about your measurement platform, the tools you're using, the people who are going to be doing it, and how you're going to be reporting long before you set out and actually start communicating.
And Deirdre, if you want to maybe take that one step further to provide any practical examples of how measurement is enabling your clients to make decisions. I know we had Dane kind of touch on that a few moments ago, but now I'd like to take the theoretical and make it practical. What are some specific decisions your clients can create or realize based on sound measurement?
So I think that it always depends on the program. I do a lot with my clients around content marketing, thought leadership, and influencer relations, which also includes media today, but media is the bloggers as well, and there are very powerful new influencers out there. And, understanding that if you want your content, you're sharing certain cornerstones and cobblestones, as I had mentioned before, that you're looking at the engagement, you're looking to, let's say, you're asking certain influencers to participate in your program. Does their reach actually extend your awareness farther? Is what you're sharing coming through in terms of the right messages to your audience? And you can see this by the way your influencers share and the way people are talking and how they're engaging. And that right there tells you, what we were formulating in our planning as far as our messages are going, did they come through? And if not, what do we need to do to make sure that we're getting ourselves across clearly and in an accurate way so that it does reach them, in fact, and resonate. And you can see this through how they rally around your content, what they say. And if you're looking for advocacy, did you move the advocacy needle? And did they, in fact, endorse you and talk about you with their friends? So you really have to look at benchmarks in time to say, is this working, and how can we adjust what we're saying and even the content we're sharing if it's not if it's not inspiring them to do something with it?
Thank you. And we can come back to you if you have any other examples. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and tweak that question for Dane. Are there any primary decisions that you feel, and undoubtedly I know the answer to that would be yes, but if you could maybe share some primary decisions that are improved through data analysis, any specific cases you can think of, clients, without necessarily mentioning them, how can they improve primary fundamental decisions through data analysis?
Absolutely. And so when we're looking at this, we also have to think about what's going on outside of PR and kind of in the business world as well. And when we see companies like Uber and Trulia hiring hundreds of data scientists to power their applications and technologies, we have to start asking why. So we're thinking about all of this data, right? We've talked about all of this public data, all of this social data, all of this user data. There's so much data that at times, what do we do with it? So even at AirPR, we actually have a data scientist and team on our site as well, looking at how do we organize all of this data and how do we utilize technology. So it's almost looking at, it's maybe a terrible example, but it might work. It's almost, if you remember the movie The Matrix, where you have that data component, right? So when the main guy kind of finally sees the data, that's all happening in the background. And we have all of these applications to orchestrate what we want that data to do. And there's a lot of really cool dashboards and technologies out there that visualize that data for exactly what we need and what we want it to do. And that's really the cool aspect of what's going on in that larger marketplace. So when we ask ourselves and when we need to answer a business decision, it really starts with that question. What is it that we want to measure and why? What is it that we're trying to do, and how are we going to accomplish it? Now, the data out there exists. We have our customer data, we have all the various public data, and now it's just orchestrating it and attaching it and putting it through the right technology and in the right visualization for it all to make sense. And that's the mission at AirPR when it comes to PR data, is orchestrating that so all of these data points that are important to you are in a technology that works for you. So it's a very exciting time for technology.
Thanks for that answer, Dane. I was going to pause and share the results of the poll that we took at the top of the session today. The question again was, are you measuring or not? And interestingly, it came out 50-50. Half of our attendees today are measuring to some degree, and half of those who are on the call are not measuring. So I guess that the glass is half full and the glass is half empty. The good news is half of you are measuring to some degree, and hopefully what we're discussing today will help you improve the validity of the results in your measurement. For the other half of you, hopefully we're giving you some ideas on where to start. It doesn't have to necessarily mean you have to go out and pay a high price to a measurement agency to assist you. There are free tools, and there's a lot of information out there to help you get started. Hopefully this webinar contributes to that knowledge for you. I also wanted to, touch on something that I can't remember if it was Deirdre or Dane that mentioned. If you needed to provide metrics to the C-suite, just to share our experience in that area, we're seeing a lot more pressure from the C-suite on PR practitioners to develop dashboards, to develop valid insights from their PR campaigns. So if you're one of those people, maybe you're in that 50% that aren't measuring yet, or you're in either side of that split, if you haven't felt some, increased interest from your stakeholders within the organization or outside to provide data, measuring is critical to that. You can get started with the integrated framework I showed earlier, but also just first consider what goals that your C-suite wants to see. What are they asking you for? Are they asking you for ROI, which is a trap, because how do you justify your efforts? We all know the debate over add value equivalencies. And I know Deirdre and Dane, as well as our company, counsels our clients on the drawbacks of AVEs. But how can you justify your existence and the progress you're making? That's a big question, and how you answer that can dictate what direction you move into. I also wanted to call for questions. We have about 10 minutes left in our session. So if you have any questions you want to ask, please submit them now through the instant messaging console in the Onstream dashboard, and we'll make sure to get those answered before we sign off here in 10 minutes.
Todd, I have another just quick example of taking a look at the data and the information and really taking the pulse of what your customers care about through what you share. So when I was working for a steak and seafood company, an online company, we had developed a rather large program. We were working with different foodie bloggers and really getting them engaged in creating recipes from the products that the steak and seafood company had on their website. And as we were getting everybody jazzed up about these really kind of exotic seafood products that they had and ways to prepare healthy dishes, what we came to realize through the engagement, and this is more qualitative, this is where you really have to pay attention to what your customers care about and what they're thinking. There were so many comments around safety and handling of steak and seafood and facilities that are certified, and what happens from the, getting the seafood into the facility to the time that it gets to the customer. So here we were really thinking about quick, easy ways that young professionals could get their hands on frozen steak and seafood and freeze things and cook things for a whole week, have them ready, but that wasn't it at all. And it was through taking a look at the sharing habits and the qualitative comments that made us step back to say, we really need to develop videos on safety, and we have to start discussing that a lot more, and that moved the needle. And as we did this, paired with all those great recipes, we saw, it was very easy to track, on the website, people were purchasing more and more and more.
I love the reference to qualitative. I know in our measurement department, qualitative is where we find the greatest, most amazing insights for our customers. But qualitative measuring is hard for automated systems to handle. I'll start with Dane on this question. Can you give us maybe your opinion on automated measurement versus human-coded measurement? If you have a pro and a con to share, or if you hate either one of them, it would be interesting for our group to know your opinion.
No, I think, so I'll start by saying all measurement is good measurement, so I'll be on the record for that. And with the automated aspect, so there are many things that we can connect from a data standpoint and an interoperability standpoint. Now, there are some gaps in technologies, and there does come a time when, as we're discussing some of the richness of qualitative data and putting out different surveys or responses and other ways of gathering more in-depth qualitative data for that analysis, we're able to now even automate those processes. However, when it comes to a topic like sentiment and tone, I know that's a major issue that still kind of goes around different technologies in the industry, where if you have human-graded sentiment, it's going to have a higher level of accuracy than, say, automated. So at that point, it's really what is the time and cost savings and benefits of doing it manually versus automated, and does it provide the insights you need?
Thanks. Great answer. And to maybe use Deirdre's illustration for the steak and seafood client, it's hard for a computer to determine the difference between I had an awfully good steak or my steak was awfully burnt.
Well, that's funny, because when I used to work with the NBA, their entertainment group, you come quickly to learn that basketball fans and enthusiasts say things like, wow, you're killing me, and this is fat, and like things that in slang that, you think sound negative, or this is sick, it's good. So,
right.
Sometimes the machine doesn't get that.
So how do you help your clients with that? Is there anything specific you do, or are you just acknowledging the same thing that Dane and I shared related to human coders and qualitative?
Yeah, I think I'm experiencing the same. Luckily, within a lot of these platforms that are out there, you can go in as the human who fixes the sentiment around certain words so that the computer is less confused, let's put it that way. But I do think that, we struggle with the fact that we want everything to be automated. It's just so much easier and quicker for us. But at the same time, as humans, there's less error. And the reporting is really good. So I think it's something that, work in progress, we're going to have to think about and work on.
Thank you. And while you're unmuted, we're moving into the last few minutes of our session today. Is there one nugget of wisdom, Deirdre, that you could share with our attendees that if they take nothing else away from today's call, they can remember this and that will help them on their path to media measurement reliability?
Yes, I'll just say that if you're a master of the metrics, that means that you understand the importance of data analytics and your accountability, and that you're going to be able to truly demonstrate value so that you can make a friend in the C-suite.
Great. And Dane, I'll ask you the same thing. Is there a piece of gold you can offer to our attendees as a parting gift for spending an hour with us today?
So I would recommend that everyone forms a routine specific to measurement or your research or practice in measurement. And it can just be 5 or 10 minutes a day. I know Google Analytics has a free demo account. There's a lot of great resources. There's free technologies. There's, as you saw today on the screen, thousands of tool sets out there. So think of it almost like a measurement gym membership. And even if you don't go for the hour or so, go for 10 minutes a day, form a routine, start incorporating it into what you do from a day-to-day standpoint, and even if it's automating a report that sends to you or setting up an alert, it's a really cool way just to see how fascinating measurement can be. It's something that I've been drawn to, and I think it's a measure of success, and it's something that will help you in your professional careers.
Great. Thank you both. We're nearly to the end of our call today. Personally, on behalf of Universal Information Services, our media monitoring and our measurement divisions, I want to thank all of our attendees. I specifically want to thank Deirdre Breckenridge from Pure Performance Communications, as well as Dane Wiseman at AirPR for joining us as celebrity guests on this call. It's your insight and your experiences hopefully have been very valuable to the attendees. To the attendees that are on the call today, you'll receive more access to this online session. Onstream will make this live webinar available to you. But any of the companies shown on screen right now, Deirdre's, mine, or Dane's, would be happy to discuss any questions you have further. I'm sure because you attended today, you can access us for some free consultation. We'd love to hear from you. Last but not least, I have to thank Onstream for their webcast effort today, and Faye Shapiro at compro.biz. If you're not currently registered with compro.biz, be sure to do so, because you can get so much great industry information and even learn about other sessions like this from other organizations, companies, different segments of public relations and marketing. It's just a wealth of information at that compro.biz hub. I also want to put in one plug for the FEBEP conference in Washington, D.C., November 17th and 18th. FEBEP is coming to the U.S. That's the International Media Monitoring Organization. Many companies like ours belong to that. There'll be vendors and discussions related to media measurement that could be beneficial to your organization. So I would suggest that you check out febepcongress.com for more information on that. And with that, I'll conclude our event today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, Todd Murphy with Universal Information Services. We are signing off.